that's what matters.
Woo! Hello, everybody. Live.
Hello.
Welcome to a live show about Q-Teen84 or 1Q84. This is a good icebreaker. What do you think?
Oh, I have strong opinions on what I think.
I'm
Really?
I adamantly only say it one way.
Okay.
Exciting.
My opinion is it is intentionally supposed to be 1Q84 because there's like a whole chapter where Aomame is going on about like how she's in an alternate universe, and so she knows that it's 1984, but it's not quite 1984. So in her confusion, because she's trying to make sense of this like different reality that's still reality, she calls it like 1?9084 because yes, it's 1984, but it's not 19. So the Q is the question mark. So it should be 1Q84.
The Q is a question.
That's a really good detail you picked up on.
Yeah, that chapter really stood out to me because she was like in the I think she was in the library trying to research like the differences between her world and the world that she remembered, trying to like find the different I don't know, the differences in the reality. And that chapter really stood out to me for some reason.
Okay, wow. That was not even a prepared question, guys. She just remembered this.
Yeah, that was really good detail.
I'm like, can I find this chapter now? It wasn't that far in. I don't remember.
Okay, before
she's searching
her hot take.
Me, you want me to share my take?
Hey, right before, I just want to say hello to Matt.
Hello.
3 a.m. That's dedication right there.
From Australia.
Love it.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And Urza's here. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Oh, goodness. Sorry. My alarms are going off. Okay, Alana.
My logic is just rolling off the tongue. We do know that there are these parallel years. And we always know that when it's that, well, at least in the English speaking language, when you have that 17, 18, 19, that of a century, just off the tongue, that number that's in that second space of a year is a teen, right? Q-Teen 84. It just rolls off the tongue so easily, because it is a parallel year. It is the same year, but it's a parallel year showing this alternate universe, this alternate matrix, which I know we'll talk about that later. But just Q-Teen 84, it is the same year, but it is the parallel alternate universe, the alternate matrix of that year.
Interesting.
Because we see that in the book the whole time, the parallel. It's a parallel. The track has switched. That's another word that we get. The track has switched, or the phrase that we get. And so I also think it's just easier to say.
That's fair. It is.
Yeah.
Ooh,
okay.
Popcorn.
This is fascinating.
Please, whoever says yes, get popcorn. Please eat that for me.
Yeah.
As I'm eating my yogurt, I was trying to get some extra protein in.
Oh, man. Yes, definitely do.
Everybody should get popcorn. Please eat it on my behalf.
Yes, eat all the popcorn for us.
I'm gonna have to check this out. I need to read more Murakami.
So do I. This is my only Murakami I've read thus far.
Oh. That was gonna originally be our icebreaker. Okay. How much Murakami? Like, what is your? But I wanted to say too, my logic for why I call it 1Q84 is so basic. It's because that's what the audiobook says.
Oh,
interesting.
I mean, that's fair too.
Yeah.
Because I was saying Q-Teen 84 after I heard Alana's, thoughts on it. And then when the audiobook started saying it, then I started saying it, because when you're listening to the audiobook, you just keep hearing it. So now I'm like, I don't know. But anyways.
Well, I'm going to have to start calling it Q-Teen 84 because that is way easier than 1Q84.
It's definitely not as heavy on the tongue.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. I like it.
It also makes me sound fancy like this.
Oh, yeah.
It does make you feel a little fancy.
Also, it feels a little cutesy, like it's QT84. It's just a little
Oh, wow.
cutie.
I heard somebody else say it too, but I can't remember who it was.
Okay, we're gonna need y'all to tell us. I'm still making the slide as we speak, but we need y'all to tell us, how do you pronounce the title of this book? Which do you take Alana's point of view, Michi's point of view?
Burping. Excuse me.
We were just talking about burping right before we got on. This is the brilliant stuff we talked about. So yes, tell us how you pronounce Q1084. And Tatiana's here. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
1Q84.
Okay, this is great to know. Okay. Excellent. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, keep letting us know. And in the meantime, we're going to chat about... I know that Michi has a history with murakami. So tell us, what's your history?
I am quite a Murakami fan. I just really like his like meandering writing style. It's like plot's not necessarily the focus of any of his stories. It's more like the concepts and the ideas that are the focus of his stories, which means that his stories go all over the place and they tend to always have some kind of like gentle, surreal factor to it. Like there's something surreal, but it's not necessarily like hugely magical. Like there's not somebody waving a wand or like there's not these like hard magic rules. It's just like a gentle surrealism to the stories that I really enjoy. I've read, I think 4 now, because I've read 1Q84 first, and then I read Wind Up Bird Chronicle, After Dark, and Kafka on the Shore. And I really like 1Q84, but I think Kafka on the Shore I like a little bit more. But it is a controversial story because the philosophical questions it asks are uncomfortable questions to ask, and so the story does things that a lot of people are not comfortable with. I won't answer the question about what Kafka on the Shore is about, but it does touch on the writer, but also Kafka is a word that means bird as well, and that's a major theme in the story. So I digress.
Cool.
I really like him.
Yeah.
You know, he has a new novel coming out. Did you see that?
Ooh, I'm excited.
It's released this year. Yeah, he has a new novel coming out. I think if you go on Vintage's, I think it's Vintage. Go on Vintage Publishing's IG page. They posted about it recently.
Ooh.
I can't remember the name of it, but I remember that the picture was black and gold.
Is it The City and Its Uncertain Walls?
I can't remember the title. I have no clue. I remember screenshotting it, but.
Are you going to read it, Alana?
Well, this is the only Murakami that I've read thus far. So before I read any new releases, I'm going to go back. I think the next Murakami that I'm actually going to read will be Wind Up Bird Chronicles, and then Kafka on the Shore sounds like it's right up my street also. And then once I kind of do that, then maybe Norwegian Wood. I kind of want to visit some of his old catalog first before I get to the new one. As you guys know, I think probably, I don't know if you guys know this, maybe Christy knows this, but I'm not buying books. I haven't purchased a book since December. Good. I'm only purchasing books as I'm about to read them. So the book's Murakami's not going anywhere. He's not going to be an author where they're just going to start discontinuing his stuff. You know what I mean? Right. He's not going to go out of print. So I'll get to it when I get to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have, I know in the past you had kind of like a timeline for everything you're going to read. So he's not on the timeline currently.
He might. Like I'm still playing around with reading a Murakami this year, and my reading this is a tangent. I don't know, whatever. But my reading has slowed down a lot. I'm kind of embracing like the spontaneity of life a little bit more this year, which has been really, really nice. I read 5 pages yesterday because I was on the beach just listening to the ocean. I brought my book. I was like, forget this. I'm just gonna enjoy being outside. And I actually have a timeline of what I thought I was going to read this year. It's out the window. I'm going to read what I want to read.
Yes.
As the day allows. We're going to roll with it. So, but tentatively, Wind Up Bird Chronicles is playing in the back of my mind because I'm currently in the mood for books that are heavily philosophical.
Yes.
And asking really difficult societal questions. And Murakami, I found, gave that to me with Q1084. So maybe. Like I'm reading Camus right now, and Camus is making me want to read Dostoevsky.
Mm.
And then I'm still want to read Murakami. So we'll roll with it. That was a tangent, but there you go. You were at the beach. It's snowing here. You guys, let me tell you, where I am on the East Coast, it was 85 degrees yesterday, low humidity. I went out there and sat there for 3.5 hours. Unseasonal. This was Mayweather. It's going to change next week, but it was amazing. Man, I was soaking it up.
Pretty jealous.
Mhm.
Well, let us know if you end up hopping on to Murakami,
Yeah.
because I definitely want to join you.
Okay, that would be a fun buddy read. I don't think we've ever buddy read, Christy.
I don't think so.
You haven't.
Because before you were super structured with your reading.
Yeah.
But now you're like a mood reader. So
I have become a mood reader because life has dictated that. We were going to read a Meiko Kawakami together too. We discussed that.
We are. We should actually do
that. Which Meiko Kawakami?
Was it Heaven? I think it was Heaven.
Yes. Yes, Heaven. And that one's, I don't think it's even very long.
No, it's like a novella, I think.
It's really tiny.
Yeah. That one's a good one.
Oh my gosh, so Michi's already
I went on a binge of her books after I found Milk and Eggs. I was like, dang, okay. I like her.
We read that. We could do another live, the three of us, since we would have all read it.
Yes.
That's an easy one to reread because it would only take like a few hours.
Okay.
Let's do it. I'm down. Okay, so we had people weighing in 1Q84. I think we saw that one. And then 1Q84, but I like QT84 better.
I know, Matt. Me too. I'm convinced.
You.
I've been converted.
Looks like my screen. Man, hot dogs. Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. So let's see. Why don't we talk about? Oh, and y'all can tell us as well if you have enjoyed. I think we already talked about this. People talked this a little bit about this in the chat, but let us know too if you're watching this on replay or anything. Let us know in the comments what your history is with Murakami. But now let's talk about genre, because the back of my book says it's a dystopia, and that threw me off at first. I was like, is it dystopia? I mean, it's called Q1884, which definitely says Orwell, which is a dystopia. So, but that really made me like rethink what I was reading, because it feels like an alternate reality, but I wasn't really thinking dystopia, I don't think, before then. So now I'm really curious. On Alana's wonderful review on Instagram, she actually had some genre labels that she listed, but I'm really curious, how does dystopia feel accurate to you guys, and what other genre labels would you use in reference to not 1984, sorry. The book we're actually discussing.
Though that is also a good book.
Oh yeah, one of my. I love
if
that
you
book.
want to get your soul crushed a little bit.
I like getting my soul crushed through a book.
Same.
If it's not soul crushing, I don't want it.
That's probably why dystopian is my favorite genre.
I feel like I knew that about you. I feel like I did know that.
I like my soul being crushed for some reason.
Okay.
I'm broken as a person, I guess.
Builds character.
I agree.
Who wants to take that question first?
I think you should.
Oh, okay. I agree with it being a dystopian novel. But I think it doesn't just fit in one genre.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I have, let me backtrack. This is why I think it's a dystopian, because when books start talking about alternate universes, the word matrix comes up a lot. When it starts, and I don't feel like he does this in a heavy-handed way, but it is blatant, where he's saying, what you see is not necessarily true. You can't trust certain entities. When you have that kind of mood in a book, it's making you question the universe as you see it in the world that's been constructed to us, what's true and what's false. But when books, for me, dabble in multiple categories, because my book says a love story, a mystery, a fantasy, a dystopia. For me, that's general fiction. It's a catch-all, because I think to box it in just as a dystopia or just as an unrequited love story or a fantasy or magical realism is too narrowing, So I kind of categorize Outlander or the Outlander series the same way. It's a general fiction, even though it was categorized as a romance within the first like 25 to 30 years of its initial publication. It touches on way too many things to be shoved in a box. It's a dystopian, yes, but it is a love story. And it is I don't even know. I feel like fantasy is too broad. Fantasy is too broad. I think it's more magical realism
Yes.
than a fantasy, but it's Murakami, I don't think would give himself one label genre if he were to be asked this question.
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe the key is just don't use a genre.
I think it's just general fiction.
Or even speculative fiction might be a better term.
Good one. Yes, I think I like that.
I mean, I Googled the definition of dystopian just to kind of like compare the story to the actual definition. Because a lot of people, when they think dystopian, they think like Hunger Games and what's that other one? Divergence or whatever. They think like the popular ones from the 2010s. But dystopian is a genre that's been around for like such a long time.
Right.
And the definition, according to Le Google, is relating to or denoting an imagined state of society where there is great suffering or injustice. And I feel like that is 100% what's being portrayed in 1Q84. It's absolutely an imagined society, and the whole focus is on the impact of the suffering and injustice. You have Aomame and her story of injustice, which is all about the domestic violence. And then you have Tango's area of injustice, which is all about being like forced into these, it's like being forced into these situations where you're lying to make money in a sense. And he's very moralistic about it, and it's like really upsetting to him. And I know that doesn't feel like super great suffering, but I think it's a really interesting conversation on like that is a common thing in our society. It's not like he's the only one that's ever happened to. And it felt like his editor friend, it's not the first time he's had that kind of idea before. Yeah. Oh, it's a good book. You should read it. It's long though, so
it doesn't feel long. I don't think it felt long. I mean, I went through it in like less than a month.
Yeah, but I would agree. I don't know that dystopia is the best descriptor for it. I think it's a descriptor. I think speculative fiction would be
I like that
a better genre name for it.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like speculative fiction. Yeah.
This is something I've noticed about Murakami is that all of the references in his books are like super Western. Like
he's been known for that. Yeah, he's been known for that. Yeah.
Yeah, After Dark takes place in a Denny's most of the time. Or like at least half the book is in a Denny's.
Ew, Denny's, gross.
Yeah, and the whole time I'm reading, I'm like, it's in a Denny's in Japan? Like,
I'm disappointed, Murakami. Denny's is disgusting.
But then it goes to a love hotel, so like, you know, there's very Japanese elements in it.
Denny's in the same story. It's a Disney. Oh,
yeah.
Somehow this
it's After Dark.
Somehow those two are a vibe.
Yeah, because she's in this overnight Denny's, and then she runs into people that are at a love hotel, and she kind of
what? Yeah, are they like breakfast or something? What they do?
They're like a diner.
Oh, like all American.
Yeah, like pancakes, eggs.
Don't do it, my people.
Hash browns.
Go to IHOP.
Okay. So this is so interesting because I did not ever read the Google definition of dystopia, Michi. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. When in doubt, Google the definition.
This is I feel like this is, let's see, it's what on the MBTI is that where you make connections like that? I can't remember. Is it
the intuition is where you make leaps between two concepts or two ideas.
Intuition. Thank you. Thank you for your intuition. We appreciate it. So this is so interesting because I always used to think of dystopias as something that was taking place in the future.
Same.
But this was published in 2009, I think.
Yeah.
Is that right? So
yeah, it was.
It's written in the past. He's writing it about, well, you don't really know. I mean, Q1884.
Allegedly.
In the past.
Right.
Maybe not.
No, we don't know. It feels modern, though. It feels, I mean, I know like 1984 was not that long ago, but it still feels contemporary. Minus the clothes mentioned.
Yeah. Oh, his description of clothes, though. He's so in depth with his description.
Yeah. I'm looking at the publication date. Sorry.
I know. I was like, mine doesn't even have it. The publication.
I'm looking at the.
It's more historic than futuristic. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying.
I'm looking for the page where they tell you all the.
I feel like I remember looking for it.
It's in the back of this book.
This book is set up weird with all the like 1Q pages that are just like, look, there's just like pages in the book that are even just like.
Can we discuss that for a second? Like, even the way that this book is, the typeface and all of that they've done is deliberate to the story. It's immaculate. Even though the way that this is printed is immaculate. They put this, which is where you have all the copyrighted stuff. Usually it's traditionally in the front. They put it in the back on purpose. Like, they make no mistakes when it comes to like the design of this book.
That's interesting.
Everything is deliberate.
Super immersed in the idea of this alternate universe.
It was translated, or it came to the U.S. published 2011. Copyright for this 2009.
Yeah, 2009.
U.S. 22, either 10 or 11, something like that. Okay.
That is fascinating. Okay.
Somebody got E. coli. Oh my gosh, my uncle got E. coli in Denny's. I told you, Denny's ain't no good. Don't do it.
Dude. I don't trust Steiner food like that.
Nope, unless it's like a mom and pop chain, not doing it.
Probably wise. Okay. Why don't we talk about how does this story correlate with the year 1984? We talked about this a little bit, but is it related to Orwell's 1984? And like, if so, how? Because I think the book is actually mentioned in here somewhere because I remember having it. So that seemed like, okay, it's deliberate, you know. What do you guys have thoughts on the relation between those two?
Yeah, I do.
They feel really different. Okay.
Yeah. Well, before she says anything, I just want to say, like, at first, when I first read the book, I was like, where's the connection? Because I was expecting, like, you know, the like oppressive regime stuff of the 1980. I was expecting that aspect of 1984, like the more like broad strokes of 1984, that I was missing the genuine connection. So I almost am a little, but I think part of why I picked it up is because I thought it would be more like 1984. So it was like a shock for me that it was less like 1984 in the way that I was expecting. But I do think it is, now that I have thought about it more and have pulled back and thought more about the themes of 1984. But at first I was like, what is this connection? Because all I see is that it takes place in the year 1984.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I wanted to say before Alana explained, because I know she's going to have a really good explanation. Yes.
Yes, tell us.
I agree with you, Michi. It's more of it's the themes and the concepts behind 1984 and Q1984 that he's drawing here, particularly about how we're told society is structured a certain way, and there are those couple. Again, we have a male and a female, like we do in Q1984 and 1984, who are working against the structure of society. Yes, in Q1984, it just feels like normal society, but the curtain is peeled back to reveal a matrix, because the word matrix is it used in here? It might not be. This book actually heavily reminded me of The Matrix, the movie.
Yeah.
But it's these themes, and I have some quotes here, if you don't mind.
Yes, tell us.
You can't trust them, he said with a hollow ring to his voice. They're half lies. The Expressway Corporation only releases reports that suit its agenda. If you really want to know what's happening here and now, you've got to use your own eyes and your own judgment. And so basically, it's just like there are a select few in society that are willing to be challenged, make themselves uncomfortable, and dive deeper behind the facade of what we're given and see, are we being lied to? What is truth? And that's what you have with Aomame and Tango. And then there's another quote, and he lays this all out within like the first 10 pages of the book. Please remember, things are not always what they seem. It's just that you're about to do something out of the ordinary. And after you do something like that, the everyday look of things might seem to change a little. Things may look different to you than they did before. I have had that experience myself, but don't let appearances fool you. There's always only one reality. And what is that reality? Is it Q-Teen84 or is it 1984? And so it's the themes of 1984, but I think in a way, Murakami is doing his own thing.
Agreed.
This is a unique piece of fiction. It's a standalone.
Okay. Wow. That was great. Yeah, I think you guys are totally right, because the themes, like, we'll talk about themes. We have a whole question about themes, but so I won't go into it yet, but that might lead us into themes. But okay. I want to finish with this verse because, Michi, do you have any thoughts on this as well?
Well, I don't want to like cut off your thoughts if you were going to share.
No, I think I'm like, this is great. I'm hearing from you guys your thoughts, because these are like questions that I have, as I'm reading through it. So I'm like talking with you guys about it and learning as we talk. So
yeah,
go for it.
I mean, I think we can mention some of the themes, like control of information being a huge theme. Breaking down or fighting against the system is also a theme in 1984 and Q-Teen84. It feels weird, but good at the same time to say it like that. And in general, like it's like she said, it's a male and a female, kind of like they're the only ones who are kind of like seeing through it. I mean, obviously they're not the only ones seeing through it as we meet the other characters, but we really only get their point of view until we get my favorite point of view later. But that's besides the point. I feel like that point of view is even further away from the 1Q84 concept that it's, I don't want to talk about it yet, but he is my favorite point of view. I'm just saying I love him.
That's another question in case y'all are wondering.
Good. Well, I'm excited about that.
Favorite point of view. Awesome. All right. Yes. Well, if you read it last September, it's probably pretty familiar with you still, John. So you're welcome to chime in with any thoughts. Well, why don't we just go ahead and talk about the themes? I'll pull up the question about that. But you were talking about control of information, and let's see, there was another one you mentioned, Michi. Do you want to talk about those at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think controlling the information or control of information is one of the biggest themes throughout the story. I mean, even from the very beginning, like the quotes Alana was giving, that taxi driver is like giving her all these hints that like she's gonna start to see through all the lies and the information, and like right away she's like, didn't people have these type of, like, didn't cops have these type of guns? And then she starts like going into the spiral of looking for this information. She ends up finding this sort of like cult group of people who were supposedly like professors and people who are really like intelligent and scientists and stuff, but they're in this like weird cult situation which has a lot of like domestic violence, DV kind of stuff going on. And so that's her story, is like uncovering that hidden controlled information and bringing that to light. But then Tango on the other end is also finding out the same information, but in a completely different way. There's this girl who's wrote this story that everyone thinks is fiction because it's like really unbelievable about this air chrysalis. Like you're going to hear or read air chrysalis a bajillion times reading this book. It is important. I feel like it's a pretty good metaphor or like analogy for the control of the information, which we can get into if we want to. But Tango is kind of uncovering this same information, but from a completely different angle. And okay. I've lost the plot, but I'll pass it off.
Well, first though, I want to hear, okay, how is air chrysalis related to the control of information? I'm so curious.
Okay. Well, here we might be getting, well, I guess the whole thing, this is like a spoiler show, right? So I can,
you can spoil it.
Okay. Air chrysalises create copies of people that are soulless and emotionless, but they have all the memories of the person that they were created by. So, I mean, one of the main questions is like, Fukaeri, is she the copy or is she the original? Like, we have this. I don't even think that question gets answered, does
We
it?
don't know.
Yeah, we don't know if she's the fake one or the real one. But also, could we even know when somebody's that abused? Like,
yeah, I was going to say, we don't even know. We wouldn't know. That
yeah,
could be her
I don't think there's
personality
any.
either way.
My personal theory is that it is a copy, but yeah,
that was my hunch too.
Yeah, that's my personal theory.
Ooh.
But yeah, the air chrysalises are copies of people that are, I mean, it's kind of like 1Q84 or 1984, right? Where they take people who have broken the rules and then they like force them to come back and say that they've been changed and they're new people when like clearly they're not. But like for the sake of this society continuing on, they are basically copies of themselves, unallowed to be fully themselves. And the air chrysalis is basically the same.
Yo, this just occurred to me. Did anybody think this? If that's her copy was deviant to what a copy was supposed to be.
Yes. Getting
because
with Tango.
Yeah, Tango. she was, the copy was deviant. So that does mean that the copy can act outside of the script or act outside of what they were designed to do in this alternate universe.
I honestly think that would make the book better if that's the case.
That makes it even better.
Yeah.
That means can you really be controlled? I think that's a question about free will.
Yeah.
Free will, that's it.
Where is the origin of free will? Does it come from emotions? Does it come from history and experience? Or is it like a intrinsic thing?
Right.
Yes, because there's like a quote where Aomame is talking about this with her cop friend, I think, about does free will even exist, or are we actually all like just carried along?
Right.
Yeah. I wish I could find that now, but I don't think I have time to look for it right now. So interesting. Okay, we have
That's a problem with a 1,000-page book. Finding what you're looking for is a little difficult unless you know exactly where.
Right? That's what my copy looks like.
This is where I think Alana is really smart to write out reviews, because once you've written it out, you actually get like a whole new level of understanding of where the quotes are.
Yeah, it helps you retain the information.
Yeah.
Months later. Yeah, sometimes years later.
Yeah. So, Alana, do you have thoughts about the themes of QT84? Any more thoughts about it?
Definitely free will. That's one. Like I'm not going to belabor that because we kind of already talked about it. But is there free will? Do we really have free will? Or are there limits to it? Is there free will up to an extent, but we're still part of this type of fate, if you will? Morality is definitely, there are questions on this question of morality. That's a theme. I know you have a question about that, Christy. What is and what are morals and ethics, and what are the rules? Are there certain situations where certain things are allowed to be more gray, like murder? Because with what Aomame does, as she's an assassin, but when you find out why he's an assassin, you get it. Whether you agree, murder is murder, but when you find out why she's an assassin and who she works for, you're like, well, I don't really feel bad for these guys, because they were, abusive. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the themes that really stood out to me, was the domestic violence theme, because both of Aomame's friends are dealing with that, and they both end up being killed by men, so that really stood out to me. And I know Michi connected that as well in with control of information and some of the other themes. So I didn't see any connection there. So I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay. This is great. So yeah, why don't we go, let's look at some of the comments briefly, and then we'll talk about the right and wrong in QT84. I'm just going to say that. It's so easy.
It's so much easier. I can't unthink it now.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We would love to hear your thoughts, honestly. But yeah, You can just send in on the chat if you have thoughts. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So Matt says 2 books that he kept thinking about throughout this are The Sunken Lands Begins to Rise. The Sunken Land Begins to Rise Again.
I've never heard of either of those books.
I need to check that out for sure. And Our Share of the Night by Marianne. Thank you, Matt. I mean, if it's like this, if it reminds you of this, then that seems like I would want to know any book that's part of the conversation that this book is part of. So thank you. Similar energy and themes. Same. All right. Who wants to start with right and wrong in this world? Do you guys, so blue and orange morality is like,
I've never heard those.
Yeah, I'd never heard that.
I'll be honest.
Okay. So it's like a writing term.
Okay.
For when an author creates a world where the morality it looks nothing like black and white morality. Like we have black and white morality. That's a concept that we have. Blue and orange it's so different that it's not even comparable. Like the things that are right in this world versus the things that are wrong are totally upside down. Like not really having to do with anything that we would consider right and wrong.
That makes perfect sense. I'm so glad you put that in there because I think it's relevant, not just for Q1084, but when we read books in general. I think when you read a book like Q1084, you have to immerse yourself in this world and kind of put our own thoughts on what we consider as a society or personally what are morals and ethics, because this is its own world. It's a fiction, and you have to kind of say, these are the rules of this book, and that's what stands. And I do that I try to do that with almost anything that I read. It's hard because we cannot be completely cold when we're reading a book. We're always going to bring ourselves to that book, but it does have its own rules. And those rules, I think when it comes to, is there a right and wrong in Q1084? I think yes, but it's not our right and wrong. And that right and wrong in this book does change based on the nuances of a particular situation. Mm-hmm. Like Tango and, oh my gosh, what is the young girl's name?
Fukai.
Yes. Can I spoil something real quick?
Yes.
They have this sexual encounter. And when you look at the ages involved, again, we think she's a copy. So, okay, you can throw that in there if you think she's a copy and is he really having sex with the 17-year-old girl? But when you look at that and the age difference, that's illegal. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's illegal. But in the confines of Q1084, it stands.
It feels like the right thing to do in the moment.
And I have a theory on that and why it also is right in the world of Q1084. Murakami references, hold on, I have it quoted. I marked that whole section. I thought it was one of the most fascinating. It reminded me of Noah's Ark and the flood because they're having sex. It's completely devoid of emotion. It is literally a clinical act for the purpose of, it's really symbolic. It's heavily raining, it's pouring, it's storming. And it reminded me of Noah's Ark, where you have male and female copulating for the sake of the next generations. It's a very symbolic of these two worlds, these two tracks coming together. Mm. It's an awakening, right? And while this is happening, something's happening with Aomami. So it's almost, I wouldn't say it's a spiritual experience, but it's definitely has its own world. And I think that if people were just to read that scene, they're going to be stuck on, this is a 17-year-old girl and this 30-something-year-old man. But really in this world, it stands. Murakami knew exactly what he was doing, and we have to put our own thoughts aside. It's actually highly immoral in this book. And especially when you look at her background and what's happened to her, we know that she was abused also. She's now choosing to do this. So that's also symbolic for this character.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, like, because some people might be like concerned about the R word or anything, but I feel like if anyone was on that side of things, it would be Tango, not the girl. So a fully grown adult, the 29-year-old man, is the one who's, in a sense, being taken advantage of a little bit.
Yes.
He didn't ask for that, and he was kind of fighting against it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So It is kind of like turning that concept on its head.
Yeah.
Especially since she was R-worded so many times previously in the story by the what's his name? The
The leader?
professor, the leader, the
Yeah.
chairman, what I don't know what
The leader, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Something like that. The leader. And the professor. No, he was a professor too.
He was a professor. I
Yeah.
remember he had a name, like a nickname that they all called him.
So,
Maybe
yeah.
leader it is. That sounds right.
Mm-hmm. I think it was leader with a capital L.
Right, with a capital L,
They
exactly.
needed a pronoun. But yeah, it was definitely some Noah art. Man, Murakami's I'm convinced the man's a genius, personally.
Yeah.
And
There's so thought behind everything. You know, it's just as they like the very first chapter tells you nothing is as it seems, and you just have to know that going in, nothing is as it seems. It's like it's very
and we're allowed to feel uncomfortable reading some of the content that's in this book. I mean, I think great literature is going to make you feel uncomfortable, but some of it we do. And I don't blame people for not wanting to read certain things because everything is personal. Like, I think that's fine when people just choose to opt out of certain types of things in books. But I do think that this is a book where some of it, if you want to read it, you have to put your own notions of morality on the door at the door. Because, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that's any Murakami book. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that too. That's why I need to read more of him.
Yeah.
Because it would be really easy, and I've seen people do this, take quotes and be like, this is so problematic, I reject it.
But they take the context out. There's no context. And it can still be uncomfortable, but there is a context. Everything that Murakami does is deliberate.
Yeah.
In a 1,000-page book, it is immaculate. He never contradicts himself. Everything has a purpose. Everything. I made a playlist based off every single song he mentions is important. Every piece of literature. Proofs in Search of Lost Time is mentioned so much because as Aomami is in this waiting period in search of lost time, she's reading it. Everything is immaculate.
Can you send us that playlist?
I have it. I have a screenshot of it. And every time a song was mentioned, a new song was mentioned, I would write it down.
Thank you.
Wait, we detour. We were talking about right and wrong.
Yeah. What do you have thoughts on this question, Michi?
Well, sorry, I got a little distracted because I was just now thinking about all the music references that he makes. And I definitely will listen to the music in the background to try to get in the vibe that he's trying to get across. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to read any Murakami, you shouldn't expect black and white morality. That's just not his thing. And he will push the envelope really, really far. The whole thing about the cult, even the cult's morality is questionable. Like the leader's morality is questionable. Aomame's morality is questionable. Tengo's questionable. Fukaeri's questionable. They're all questionable. So I think at the end of the day, this story would, in an ideal world, make you question your sense of morality. Because like Alana was saying, it's kind of like relative to the situation, what's the most moral thing to do? And there's not like a clear dividing line between what's right and wrong. So I think blue or orange morality is the best way to describe, because they're, I'm just I could think of all these examples from the book that are questionable.
Yeah.
And I think he's making us Murakami at the macro level, because all of these characters have things that are less than ideal about them based on the decisions that they make, should they or should not have done certain things. But that's ourselves. We all operate in this. That's what we do. Because we're imperfect, we're going to make decisions that are not always moral. And I think that's just human nature, and Murakami is pointing that out. You could be a great person, but there are going to be things in your past, present, and future where someone would question, was that the right thing to do? You would question it yourself. Did I do the right thing? We're never going to get it right. But you do the best with what you have. And try to make the right decision. And I think that's with Aomami and Tango in particular. You can tell that they really do try to do the right thing according to the situation that they are thrust into. especially when the tracks switch.
Because every time Tango makes the decision to get deeper and deeper into this, like the rewriting of, you know, Air Chrysalis, and, you know, then every decision he makes, it's like, I can see why he's doing it, you know?
It makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense why he's doing what he's doing, why Aomame is doing what she's doing.
And Tango is questioning it the whole way down. He's
Ugh.
like, is this the right thing?
Tango's one of my favorite.
Aomame.
It's like edamame, but aomame.
Okay. Aomame, there it is.
Which is a type of bean, which she has a lot of
delicious.
resentment towards being named after a bean. A bean.
A pea.
Yes, it's a pea, right?
Why don't we... I did find the quote, by the way, that when we were talking about themes, we were talking about free will. So I just thought, oh, I'll read the quote. I actually managed to find it. So Aomame and Ayumi are talking, and Aomame says, "It's the same with menus and men and just about anything else. We think we're choosing things for ourselves, but in fact, we may not be choosing anything. It could be that everything's decided in advance, and we pretend we're making choices. Free will may be an illusion." I often think about that.
Same, girl. Same.
So I enjoy their conversations. The two women. So okay. We mentioned this as well briefly in passing, but do you guys want to share which perspectives are your favorites? Michi, start.
Well, it depends on what part of the story, which one is my favorite at the time, but I'd say overall my favorite is the third point of view, which comes in later. And part of why I think I like it the most is this is a character that you've met in part 2, and he's been kind of an antagonist. He's like this really ugly guy who knows that he's ugly. He's got an ugly personality. He's rude. He's abrasive. And he's after Tango. Like, he knows something's up with Tango, and he's trying to find out what's up with Tango. So he becomes like, he like starts spying on him and stuff. And the whole point of view of him like spying on Tango and starting to uncover the same mystery as everyone else is just like, it's so much fun because of who it is, especially like given how he's introduced and built up, that when he finally gets his own point of view, it's like, of course, this is what he's thinking, but it's also like a lot of fun. But throughout the story, there are times when Aomame is my favorite, like especially in part 2. Aomame is a really interesting point of view. Tango's going through a rough time in part 2. He's going through a really rough time. So I feel bad for him, but he's not my favorite. And I like him more in part 1. He's my favorite part 1. Aomame's my favorite part 2. And then part 3, my favorite is, what's his name?
Uchikawa,
yep.
Interesting. So it changes depending on part of the book.
For sure.
But I love the detective who's piecing things all together as well. Like when you mentioned him, I remember we talked about this book like quite a long time ago. And you were telling me that was your favorite. And I was like, you know what? That's mine too. I always like the detective characters because they're putting things together.
Exactly.
It's exciting, to watch that plot.
And you like him more after seeing his point of view, because before you just think he's a jerk and an a-hole. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe, he has a reason for the way he acts. So like,
he's pigeonholed in his own way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like being unmasked in his point of view, which is fun.
Yeah.
Yes. How about you, Alana?
Mine is Aomame the whole way through, especially in the third part where she is quarantined away. She can't leave.
Oh yeah,
she's but and then with the knocking on the door, that one, there's so much tension in her narrative in particular.
That's a good point.
And oh man, I was flying through those pages, her chapters in particular, and just the way that Murakami was able to in particular make her chapters in that third part so claustrophobic and so tense while she's reading In Search of Lost Time. Even though she's just doing the same thing over and over again every day, there's so much tension. And I think that for her, her narrative is the one that's the most dynamic from the beginning to the end. She's really the most active character.
Right.
She's on the freeway, and then she's climbing down the side of it, and then she's
I know, in a mini skirt.
Right?
Yeah.
My girl is ace. And she's,
Yeah.
you know, the chapters that she had with Leader.
Oh, those are the best.
She to me, it's Mommy, hands down for me. But they were all good. Like, there was never a point where I was bored reading any other perspectives.
Agreed. You make some good points about Amami's point of view. I kind of like forgot a little bit about the whole pregnancy and knocking. I remembered the knocking because I always was like, okay,
Very.
Tango's dad. He's coming. I don't know why his ghost is here and why he's found Amami, but I'm here for it.
Right? I have questions about that, man.
But no, I really love. I feel like the love story picks up in the third part, and that's where I got really invested. I think I got the most invested in part 3. The new point of view, the romance story, the tension. Yeah, there's a lot of good things in part 3.
Oh, this is just getting me excited about reading a new Murakami because I'm enjoying it just as much like the second time through. But as you guys are mentioning these things, I'm just like remembering the first time I read it.
The birds, man. And as I like the crows the whole time throughout the narrative, and the crows are outside her apartment that she's staying in. And like the birds are hooting or whatever when he's on that seaside place where his father is passing away. Man, that's why I want to read White Up Bird Chronicles first, because you know the birds are.
He likes birds. Birds are a theme in his books, cool. At least that I've seen. Birds and cats.
Okay. That's very Japanese though, with the cats.
That's
very
true.
Quintessential cat Japanese.
Yeah.
What is the theme there or symbol?
Okay, and I think Aomame as well, when we're coming up to the next question, which is I want to talk about why Murakami spends so much time describing bodies, and he does it in such a way that it actually does upset people quite a lot, especially on behalf of women. Even men are like, I just want to punch the guy, you know? But I feel like having such a strong female character like Aomame making the decisions that she does, that's kind of like, it throws people off because they're like,
she's a strong character. She's so
or
strong.
is he not? You know, you can't necessarily be reading from Aomami's perspective and be like, definitely this author's a misogynist, because
I get upset when people claim that he's a misogynist. I think that it's very, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use the word. I think it's an ignorant point of view.
Oh, I like a bold statement. Come on, Michi. Yes.
I'm just saying, if you get offended by him of all people, then, you know, I would just recommend you read Altered Carbon and learn about elusive globes, and then come back to me and tell me Murakami is objectifying women.
Okay. He's clinical. And I know I said this
exactly.
He is very clinical about the human body. He's very clinical about sex. It's a biological thing that is happening. And I made this argument in my review that the romance genre does this to men. So we cannot pick and choose. I'm going to bring up a story or something that actually happened like this past year about a real life hockey player. I can't remember if he's in the Canadian League or the American League, who was horribly objectified by the TikTok community because there was this hockey romance book or this hockey romance series, and you should see the things that these people were saying about him and his body based off how he looks. Whether it's male or female, male to female or female to male, he was objectified, period. So why do we get more up in arms when it's Murakami versus the romance community? Not all romance communities, but, you know, sometimes it was the fans that were. But even if you read some romance books, the way they talk about the male body, sometimes, not all, but sometimes. You can't pick and choose. It is or it isn't.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, he's talking about the body, but it's clinical. I mean, it's like, he's very technical to me. I read it and I don't even remember those points. The book was so brilliant. That's I think
it's a really good point to say that it's clinical, because I feel like he tries to strip away as much of the objectifying as he can to just try to like describe things that are necessary to the plot. Like if it wasn't necessary to the plot, I wouldn't be there. But I mean, to Matt's point, Matt's like, he does have some hangups. I'd agree. There are some things. Boobs. Let's be real. Boobs.
He's a boob guy. Okay.
He's a boob guy. He likes boobs. He writes about boobs. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Just like they're romance authors, they're pec guys. They're arm guys.
Yeah.
They're 6'4" guys.
Chiseled jaws.
Chiseled jaws and six packs that don't exist in real life.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
It makes you, I am part of
bodice rippers. We all know them.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm a part of several K-pop fandoms, and sometimes the way people objectify their favorite idols makes me uncomfortable as well. I'm
Same.
like,
oh, it's cringy. Like it's cringy. Like if you were to go like I referenced that hockey story, it was a hockey romance, and then for some reason this particular hockey player he has a wife and children. They were even coming for his wife.
yikes.
So how can you? And I don't know if this community is the community that's reading books like QT84. I don't know.
Yeah, don't know.
It could be people. I read all types of genres. Okay, but I'm just like, okay, you can't say one thing if you're doing it. Come on. They had the NHL had to step in.
Wow.
On Instagram, and they were like, yeah, no. The team had to step in, but it was a team. They had to step in, and they were like, yeah, no.
So
yeah.
I know, right? Leave the families alone, people.
Okay. And that was a real man, not a fictional character.
Yeah. Yeah. It is worse in real life.
And if people act like women don't talk about men a certain way behind closed doors, they're deluding themselves.
Yeah.
No, they've never read a romance novel.
Have they been in a female's locker room?
Yeah, I had a female friend. She would catcall guys. I mean, we would be sitting at a restaurant. She'd be like, "Oh my god, he's so hot," and then she'd like yell, "Hey, good looking," and like stuff like that. I'm like, dude, relax. Stop.
Throwing
Women
panties
are
on
just
stage.
Yeah, dude, who throws their panties on stage?
Come on,
so
come on. Men and women do it. They do it. Men and women do it. That's my rant.
I just get annoyed when I hear this argument. It's more of an issue with Kafka on the Shore because there's a specific sex scene that people are uncomfortable with, which you're supposed to be uncomfortable with. That's the point. That's like the theme and the moral question being brought up is this sex scene. So it is intentionally there to make you upset, but it is not because he's obsessed with sex.
I've heard Norwegian Wood has some like people like Norwegian Wood is often I think a first Murakami that people read, and when they read it they're like, oh, gosh. So it kind of makes me ask like, what Murakami is clearly doing this on purpose. He knows exactly what he's doing. We see as an author how he's very meticulous. Everything has a purpose. And so for him to use the body in this way, I think he's doing it on purpose because of course he knows the criticism that he's got. The man is a genius. He knows what's out there. He has publishers and publicists and people who are helping him with PR and media. They who, behind the scenes, they will feed certain articles to their clients. So he's aware. It's not his first rodeo. So he's doing it on purpose to create this bigger conversation of how we treat the body, how we view the body. I mean, we are, are there double standards? And in his universe, he's flipping the script on what is the narrative around sex. Just like we this blue and orange morality. I think he's doing that with the body as well because he wants you to be uncomfortable. Murakami's not here to make you feel good about yourself. He's just not.
No.
He's not going to be that person.
Christy, that quote though was perfect because I feel like that's like the embodiment of what he's getting across. Almost, I mean, in the 4 books that I've read, whenever it's about like sexual activity, it's usually removed. It's usually not romantic though. In Kafka, it is romantic, but that's also part of what makes it problematic. But yeah, I think this is like a point that he often tries to get across. Like,
I'm curious to see moving forward because Michi, you've read way more Murakami than Christy and myself, so I'm curious to see how he continues to deal with the body different narratives.
It is in all 4 books from what I've read. Descriptions of bodies and or sex. So it is like Matt said, I do think he has some hangups. He brings it up. But again, in these 4 books, most books have sex or body descriptions in them. But hold on. I want to read for you guys a true example of problematic writing. Hang on.
Okay, do it. I'm ready for it.
Okay. I'm going to find it because it's horrendous and it made me actually
have one of those moments.
Yeah. So this is chapter, I think 10. So we're barely into the book. It's like 10 or 11. It's page 94. We just got into this book. And this is already happening. Okay, this is just one sentence. Reaching back for balance and hold, she sank down, impaling herself on the shaft with a long, warm groan. She leaned over me, her breasticles swinging. Okay, he didn't say breasticles. I added that for flair.
I was like, did you really like that?
I craned and sucked hungrily at the elusive globes. Those are 2 sentences from an entire scene that is just full.
So it keeps going.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. Those are just 2 sentences. She's getting impaled and she has elusive globes.
Yeah.
I think that makes Murakami look like a kindergarten teacher. Okay. Yeah. Rant over.
Oh, yeah. I know it's something that people have criticized Diana Gabaldon about. She has a lot of, there's a lot of assault in her books. And even some of the scenes between like Jamie and Claire, who are in a marriage, some of the language that she uses. But again, it's this alternate universe that has its own morality. It's a very visceral universe. And you can see that in the relationships, the sexual relationships between the characters. I think that she knows what she's doing. And even the sex scenes in those books, they're not just there to be spicy. They are plot specific. When you have Jamie and Claire in a scene together or whatever, it's because there's something progressing in that relationship, or it's showing you something that may be tense in the relationship. So it's, people think, oh my gosh, it's a sex scene and they're talking about bodies a certain way. If we dig deeper and we look at the context around it, they're still using it to tell a story within a story. Character development, growth, plot focused, or something like that, or moral or ethical questions. We don't have to be comfortable with it, but it is what it is. Hi, neighbor. Whoever that is.
Yeah. Oh, my mother-in-law just came over and she's.
Oh, hey, mother-in-law.
Hello, Mill.
But I'm really glad to have this conversation with you guys, because you've clearly thought a lot about it and come to the conclusions that you have, knowing that other people feel very differently about it.
Right.
And I still puzzle over this because it's like so deliberate the way he writes about bodies. And I feel like he is trying to say something specific. And I think Aomame's journey too is interesting in this regard, because when she's talking to the old woman that she's working on her body in the beginning, I forget what she's called, like the widow or something.
Yeah. The older lady. Dowager. The dowager, yes.
I like
100%.
Her.
Yeah, me too.
Boss,
she's
man.
great.
Yeah. She talks about, like, one of the things that she says is basically, you need to enjoy your body to the fullest while you're young. But also she wants Aomame to find the traditional happiness by finding a man that she loves and settling down with him. And Aomame she says throughout the book, throughout the beginning, that she's very comfortable having absolutely zero relationships with like anybody. But then she's really surprised when she starts befriending this young policewoman again and really enjoying their relationship. She's like, so I feel like she's moving towards healthy relationships, and it just takes her time to get there. Mm-hmm. And the body is almost kind of disconnected from that journey for like I almost feel like her sexuality and her body, the way it's described, is purposefully dissociative in a way until she starts finding tango again, which is like the whole course of her arc.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like there's a foreshadow that she doesn't even realize the track that she's on, where it's almost like this natural progression to prepare her for tango. 20 years since they've seen each other. They last saw each other.
It's so romantic. No, but that actually triggered a memory for me about the story. Like, even like with her face, she's incredibly controlling of like which emotion she portrays, and like she cannot relax her face, otherwise it scares people away. But it's like, how could her face be that scary? Like, no one's face just contorts into a demon face when they're relaxed. So she clearly has some kind of hang up on what her relaxed, resty RBF looks like. Because it cannot be nearly as bad as she describes. But she's like, everyone is freaked out when they see it. So I cannot possibly let down my guard in any way.
Right.
And that's like one of her things throughout the story, is she like slowly becomes okay with like letting her face be relaxed. I remember that now.
Same. Yeah,
it's one of those little things.
Right.
There's so much happening in this book. There's a lot to remember.
There is. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's interesting because I feel like it's really easy to enjoy, even on like a not very deep level. But if you want to go deep, you can.
Yes.
Like, you could just listen to it and enjoy it as a story, which is like what I did for a lot of the first time I read it. But on every page, there's something that's like, this is a clue to one of the themes, and it helps you put together the puzzle. So it's just super rereadable and super
fun. Yeah, I'm gonna have to reread this one day.
In her 10-year reading plan, she has popped one.
I'm done with the flow these days, guys.
Love it. So this is something that came up when I was talking with Michi about this book once. And I think this is partly why it's easy to listen to, is because important stuff gets repeated a lot of times. Yeah. So what imagery do you guys feel like it really stands out as something important because it's repeated, and why do you think he repeats it? Like, there's a really obvious one, Tango's memory from when he's a baby.
That thing keeps coming back to haunt him, the poor guy. Is it even a real memory? That's the real question. Or is Tango?
Yeah, that's another big theme.
Hang up.
Memory, yeah.
Because he somehow remembers when he's a baby, his mom cheating on his dad with a man.
But is his dad his real father, though?
But I'm like, first of all, did it even happen? Second of all, how do you remember it? Third of all, why is it this bloody traumatic? But I don't know. I think it's him trying to make sense of you. What?
Your cat.
Oh, hello, Kitty. I think he's trying to get in the closet. I opened the back way for you, Kitty.
He doesn't care.
Okay, let me let him in. He's got to use the toilet.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna real quick.
Okay.
2.5 seconds. That shall be.
All right. Well, if anybody in the comments would like to chat, we are here. But and also, if you guys ever want to respond to any of the comments that we have up on the screen, please let us know. But yeah, that one thing is specifically repeated quite a lot. And I feel like, so I'm just going to go back over some of the other questions that I had more thoughts on while we're waiting over here. I feel like his perspective on the body is very materialist. So I think materialism in philosophy is the view that facts, including facts about the human mind and the will in the course of history, are causally dependent upon physical processes or even reducible to them. bodies feel like very mechanical up to a certain point in the story, like the way she's working on the dowager's body, but you have to keep it almost like a well-oiled machine so that it's healthy. Let me know what you guys think about this. But it feels like a very materialist view of the body, but eventually it does line up with Aomame's whole journey as a person. So that's some of my thoughts. Welcome back.
Hello.
Potty break.
That was fine. I had like things that I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just read off of my notes here.
What happens when you try to stay hydrated? Like I'm trying to drink more water. If I drink more water, I would have a better quality of life.
It's true. Good for you guys.
It just increases the number of hours spent on a toilet. It's okay.
I'll have clear skin. Okay.
I feel like Aomame would be proud of you.
She would, but she would still judge.
Care of herself. She's judging me.
She would still judge
My
us.
girl is a force to be reckoned with.
I want to get one of her realignments. It sounds scary, but it sounds amazing.
I need her to crack some joints for me.
Sounds terrifying. And her diet, the way she eats, is just like, wow.
She controls absolutely everything in her life in every way. She is the definition of like a type A personality.
She's not eating fun stuff.
And when she went out to eat with Ayumi, the contrast between her meal and Ayumi's meal.
I'm with Ayumi on that one. If you're eating out, girl, let loose.
Like such a nice restaurant. So, was there any other repeated imagery that you guys wanted to talk about?
Mm-hmm. Well, birds. We did talk about birds. The birds are, are the birds spies, and are they watching? Which is a common theme, I think, in a lot of books. Like birds are used as watchers. The moon, 2 moons, is definitely common, letting you know which universe you're in or which year you're in. Oh man, there are so many.
Insects is one.
You say what?
Insects.
Yes.
Yes. I have like quotes where I was like, he describes Aomame and Fukaeri as bugs multiple times, and I actually prepared some interesting quotes. Aomame resembled an insect skilled at biological mimicry. What she wanted most was to blend in with her background by changing color and shape to remain inconspicuous and not easily remembered. This is how she protected herself. And then page 57.
That's a really good catch.
Then this is describing Fukaeri, who's like the 17-year-old girl. She had a slender build in proportion to which boobs. Oh wait, that's not the right quote. Hold on. It's on this page. Okay. Oh, there it is. She took off her coat as if it had only just now occurred to her to do so. She emerged from it like an insect sloughing off its skin, which I think is foreshadowing that she is the fake one. But anyway, I digress.
No, good catch, Michi. That's really good.
And then there was another one.
Interesting.
That's really good. That's a really good catch.
But I put this page down as the quote, but I didn't underline it, so I'm not finding it. Oh yeah. And then there's just a lot of imagery around insects, and the whole the little people create air chrysalises, and a chrysalis is what a moth puts themselves in, or I guess technically a caterpillar puts themselves in to become a moth or a butterfly.
Right.
So insects are a big imagery and theme.
Okay. I felt like most of what I felt like was repeated I'm really glad you guys caught some of that stuff, because this was a concept that came up when Michi and I were talking, and I hadn't really thought about it before. So thank you for sharing some of your, how much time do you guys have? Like, how much longer would you like to go? Because we have a couple more questions, but we could also end it with a final question right now.
I'm pretty flexible.
I could go to it's 1:30 my time. Another 15 minutes or so?
Another 15 minutes? Okay.
Let's go another 15 minutes. I'm starting to get the hunger shakes though.
Okay.
Let me go get a little munchie. Keep talking. I'm gonna get a little munchie to keep my blood sugar up.
Okay, sounds good. I feel like our last question will take us some time anyways.
Nice.
Maybe. So why don't we just jump into the last one?
Okay.
What are some of the questions that you were left with at the end of Q-Teen84?
I have to think about that one. What was I thinking about after the end of it? Why couldn't Tango and Aomame just be together when they were in elementary school? Why'd they have to be silly about it? That's a question I had. That's a silly question, though. But I did have that question.
I mean, it's a good question. I feel like it somewhat gets to the, like, I feel like another theme that was really present in this book is religion as oppression.
Mhm.
And I feel like that had something to do, but it's not just religion. It's all of the kids have somewhat oppressive upbringings because of their parents. So
Yes.
it's not just religion. So because of their upbringings, all of the characters when they were kids were oppressed. So they weren't able to necessarily connect with each other the way that they do in later life when they're more in control of their lives. That was my opinion on it. So maybe escaping oppression and like freedom, finding freedom could be related to that. I don't know. What do you think, Michi? What do you think, Alana? Do you have any questions at the end?
Definitely the knocking on the door in the last part of the book. Who was it? Well, we know that it was Tengo's father, but why him? Was that really happening? Why was it happening? Like, what force was allowing that to happen? That was one of my favorite. That was one of my favorite occurrences in the book because it was so eerie. But there are a lot of questions because it never gets answered. So.
Yeah, that was a whole, because didn't his dad end up being in a air chrysalis like near the end of his life? Like, didn't he notice him being like worked on by the little people or something? I can't remember.
They're like, yes. I want to say yes.
I just remember
But
him having an air chrysalis.
Yeah, there was an air chrysalis in his hospital room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, now I'm,
That makes me super curious. I feel like a lot of the characters have a strange kind of disconnection from other humanity. And like the father is an example of that. Fukaeri is an example of that. I wonder if it has something to do with being a copy, being an air chrysalis.
I wonder, like, what made people get chosen to be in the air chrysalis? Because the father, like, at a superficial glance, doesn't feel like he makes sense because he's not part of the group that's related to the little people, which is this cult in the mountains. He's never once been related to them in any way. The only moderate connection he has is that his son is ghostwriting for a girl that came from that cult. That girl never met him. I don't think Tango really talked about his dad to Fukaeri. So how did he end up being one of the people in the air chrysalis? But as you were saying, like the oppression of religion, in a sense, the way that he treated the broadcasting network that he worked for, it was kind of religious in the way that I don't know, he was like very adamant that he was doing the right thing with them, and he was very consistent, and he like forced his son to come with him on these walks. But I almost wonder, was he trying to help her? Because wasn't one of the knocks when Tango was outside at the park across the street? I can't remember that. That might be a detail that's too intense.
That's something that I think on a reread I'd have to pay attention to, is when are these knocks happening? Now that I know the whole story,
right?
When are these knocks happening, and is a good? Because it feels eerie. Like, no, don't open the door. Something bad's going to happen to you. But is that the case? Or some of them warnings, like you said? And that's something that I think that I'd have to go back and put it in the context. Because while you're reading it for the first time, you don't know where it's going, so it's kind of hard to gauge.
Right. Then there's so much that happens. You cannot possibly like keep track of it all while it's happening.
I feel like there's so many threads that he just leaves, and they all end up leaving me with more questions. I just had so many questions at the end of this. So hence why I'm enjoying a reread so much. It's giving me a chance to kind of look over things again.
Those are the best kind
Because,
of books,
like,
though.
what was that?
I think those are the best kind of books, though.
I agree. It really leaves you puzzling, and it's fun. I enjoy it. The same reason I like Dostoevsky. I'm always like, what exactly are you saying here? I'm so lost. But it's fun. Even like the creation of the different utopian groups was so complicated. Like there's this school, there's the original one, and then there's a second one, and then it gets created, like a second one branches off, and
oh, that's right. They made 2 groups within the cult, didn't they? They had like the ones who agreed and then the ones who didn't agree with the whole, little girl situation, which I don't even remember why they even did the whole little girl thing. Like that is something that my mind is not remembering. I just remember that it happened, not why. There was something they thought they were gaining by doing that to the girls, I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I don't remember very well, but
I remember. I'm not going to say it on the YouTube.
Okay.
That's fair.
That seems like a good place to end then. Pump you behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not YouTube friendly at all. Like, I don't want you to get a strike.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you all, everyone, for joining us for this discussion. I think it's so funny, by the way, that we all have the same edition of this.
Well, it's just so beautiful. This is what made me get it in the first place. I looked at the cover and I was like, all right, I want to find out why there's like faces on here.
I hate faces on books, by the way. It feels like the book's looking at me. I don't like that.
There's one on the back too. It's like back and front looking.
I'll be honest, I wasn't really pleased with any of the editions of this book.
Honestly.
Covers, and I was not about to buy it in 3 parts. That's why I got this one. I wanted it in 1 volume.
Okay. It feels very Orwellian to me to have eyes on the front.
Oh, maybe good point. They might have done it on purpose.
But can anyone tell me why people say this book is repetitive?
I think because the themes are so. I got Cheez-Its. Side note, if you've never had white cheddar Cheez-Its, you're missing out. But the themes are repetitive. Like he's okay. I think maybe that's it.
Because I'm like, nothing is being repeated. Like it's all a continuous story. I was very confused by that comment. Yeah. Usually, like if there's something super repetitive, I'll be annoyed by it. Like in Addie LaRue, the star, whatever that story is, she like pads around barefoot a lot, like using that exact language, and that stood out. I remember that still, but I did not feel like it was very repetitive. So it would make sense if it's the themes, because the activities themselves and what happens.
I agree. It keeps going.
Doesn't feel repetitive to me.
I think when he's repeating something, he wants you to think about it. He's trying
with
to
the new context. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Except for maybe what you mentioned, Michi, how often he talks about boobs. I'm not sure that there was really like a message there.
No, but that's definitely his hang up. His hang up.
Yeah, but I mean, but for a second though, if we just like play devil's advocate on the boobs thing, that is Tango pretty much exclusively that's hung up on that.
Right, because of his memory.
Yeah, and breasts are what mothers use to provide sustenance and care for their child. And he never knew his mom because she was gone before he even was able to have any memory. So the only memory he has is of someone else getting the love and care that he wanted from her. And so I think in a sense for him, why he's so hung up on, the boobies is because he's like lacking that like maternal care.
Nurturing, right.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I think you're right there.
Because I don't think Aomame has all these comments about boobs.
No.
When she talks about body, it's like the whole Yeah.
She looks in the mirror and like grabs herself, and then
Wow.
when she and her friend Ayumi are laying in bed
That's
together,
true. They're touching each other. I remember that now.
Let's be real.
It's
Like,
like-
women do talk about their bodies with other women. We do.
but we
And-
don't press our boobs against each other. I'm sorry, that's just not ever gonna happen.
Well,
But it's
I've
still
never done
common though. Like I've heard of female friends who, especially in younger years, but it's not uncommon. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's not uncommon. I'm not doing it, but it's not uncommon.
it's not.
So is Murakami wrong here? You may not like it, but he's not wrong. But I do remember that you mentioned, like Tango and his mother. That is something that I remember thinking in the background about. He's longing for a nurturing with his
Right.
mother that he never had, and that is literally what breasts symbolize to an infant.
Yeah.
Is there's a bond. There's like actual hormones that are released during
Yep.
nursing.
That
bonding hormone.
was a good point, Michi,
Yeah.
about it. That actually is a
That
theme
makes
in the book.
perfect sense. Yep.
So that does make perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was playing devil's advocate for a
I'm
second.
here for it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. All right. That's probably long enough. Thank you guys for going so in depth with me. This was wonderful. And I hope we do get to do it again with more.
I say heaven with Miyako Kawakami.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I like that one. Though be prepared to be emotionally bruised by that story.
Okay.
Challenge accepted. Because I read through A Little Life with dry eyes.
You read what?
I read through A Little Life with dry eyes.
Oh, hold on. What is A Little Life?
You'll know it when you see
Oh, I haven't actually read that one. Have I read any Hanya
it. Yanagihara.
Yanagihara? I don't
I've
know
heard
that I-
Heaven is a tough read, but I mean, challenge accepted. That's what I'm gonna say. It takes a lot
So
for me to
keep
be
your
like,
eyes
have a
peeled.
it takes me a lot to have a visceral reaction to a book. There's
Yeah.
nothing that a writer can write about that I haven't heard of in real life. So
I mean, yeah, it's not that atypical what happens in the book, but I also did no, I won't say any of my thoughts
I'm
now.
excited. I'm excited.
Won't
No,
say
I
Oh wait.
It'll be different
I don't know what this
going-
was. Okay.
It'll be really different going from a book this size to a book the size of Heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be done by the time we got to like the first major plot point in 1Q84.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Let us know any other thoughts that you have in the comments, and we'll talk to you hopefully sometime, maybe later this year, but definitely we'll be here again.
Woot.
Bye.
Bye.